Welcome everyone for part two, Building Cybersecurity Strategy with Jason Clark. It's good, and I haven't heard that before, Jason, and about the core, how business identifies, and I've heard different interpretations how to relate from CISO to the board and then support whatever business does. But that was kind of interesting insight that you offered as far as Disney and building the core and then how CISO can connect. But from your perspective, like let's say business knows what the core is, a CISO needs to understand what the core is as well. And I'm pretty sure they need to internalize and start thinking from perspective of business, not from perspective of security, and then apply this flavor of security to say, yes, I understand what business wants to do, and then I need to figure it out how to conceptualize it and visualize it and deliver it in a form that business actually sees me as enabler and help sort of to deliver and go where business wants to go. So, how would let's say security professional, what the best way for them to engage with the board to make this successful sort of symbiosis with the board and say yes,
Yeah,
they see me the way they want to see it, and I want to be seen the way they want to be seen.
yeah. So once we understand what those buttons are for the organization, let's call it M&A, right? We want to acquire 20 companies in the next year, right? So how am I going to make sure I'm enabling that to go fast in a very secure way? So yes, I'm there to manage the risk, but I cannot be no, we can't do that. No, we can't do that. No, we can't do that, right? It has to be, I need to attach to something and say, this is the comfort level I have. And I instead of risk, I don't do risk computations. I kind of speak more in confidence levels. Um, and what's the confidence I have that um, you know if something happens, that I will see it and then I can respond to it, right? And so I'll give you an example, even of like to any of my companies I've been at, where I run strategy and I run internal security. So I break down and think about what the offering is of my company, and think, okay, um, how are they trying to expand? How are they trying to acquire customers? And what's our relative advantage? And this is called Rogers' 5 factors of diffusion. And if you're a CISO, like think about that for any product offering or any initiative in the company, service or product. But for me, I say, okay, what's the relevant advantage of my company against our competition in acquiring new companies? Sorry, new customers. And I say, okay, how can security help that relative advantage? Well, at Netscope in a security company, I can help it by being number one. I can be customer zero, and I can make sure that we are informing the product team of things that we think can be better about the product, or the next place that it should go versus what's already out there on the market, right? And so I want to inform and provide relative advantage. And security can provide relative advantage, or in another organization, just because of trust, right? We can have relative security can be a differentiator for many businesses, right? People obviously care about this, a lot, and they want to know that their data is protected, especially if you're a technology or a SaaS company, right? That it becomes, I mean, many CISOs at any tech company are customer facing now, and so you can make it relative advantage. And so you grade yourself on 1 to 5 there. Second is compatibility, right? And this is to the level at which it can what you're offering is compatible in the rest of in the rest of the industry, um, and really how agile your organization is to do integrations. So if you're in a security team and you're in a tech company and they're wanting to light up APIs to integrate to lots of other people, and you're a gate that slows that down too much, you are now reducing your relative advantage time wise, and you're reducing this compatibility because you want your solution to be integrated and with everything out there in the world, right? And so that's number two. Number three is you want, in how to 1 to 5, how simple or complex is your company or your solution to deal with, right? And so security can have roles and play in that as well. Because if you can make it, well, let's say I'm a customer of something, but I've got to re-authenticate through, every 15 minutes, right? Um, that is making it more complex to deal with you. Am I extra secure? Sure, but it's kind of annoying, right? And so any ways that we can help innovate and think about how we are being a simpler solution for our user, our buyer, our customer, our users, the better. And so security has a role there as well. Fourth is trialability. Um, and so when you're a product, it's real simple. Like how easy is it for a customer to play around with your tool, your product, etc. I do see security get in the way there sometimes, where it's like, oh, we can't give them that because we'd have to give them access to our source code, or they'd be in, we'd have to put them in our IAM solution, and it might. There's all sorts of potential reasons why you don't want somebody playing around with your tech, because you know what, competition will get in there, and they're going to look around, and they're going to reverse engineer what we do. So we don't want people to trial it or play with it like that, or we don't want to open up to that extent. See, my point is security has a play in all these things, and then fifth is observability, and that is how easy is it to observe the value of your product offering. So the reason I said all this is this is a tool called Rogers Five Factors, and any product if you're ever talking to startup, you could literally go there and say, okay, what's your relative advantage, 1 to 5? To what exists today. What's your 1 to 5? How compatible you are and integrated to what I already have. 1 to 5, how complex or simple are you? 1 to 5, how easy is the trial? And 1 to 5, how observable is your value to me and reporting, etc. If they don't grade um, above 3 in almost all those, they're not going to be successful. Uh, I can tell you this though: few products in history have been a 5 in all 5 in the history of the world. And the products that have are some of the most successful products in the world. And I'll use iPhone as an example, iPad as an example, right? Um, and so that's just another tool that I'm trying to share, that like you can think about business strategy, and the more you understand business strategy, the it's going to be so easy for you to align and build security into the business and get the funding you need and speak to the board.
Got it. Yeah, definitely. That's a very helpful tip, Jason. And while you were talking, one thing I was thinking is like, have you seen any of this ideas backfiring, or sometimes? Well, there is always a nice balance when to approach board, when to approach executive management with security strategy, and how to deliver it, because not everyone can comprehend the whole thing when you bring this big chunk of security controls, and especially when you take certain things out of conversation and they're not really connecting to the business strategy, but like pace. Is it Does it require a little bit of time to work them up, to make sure they understand, to have more conversations, to articulate better risk, and then start building block by block? Or you probably seen as many things that I do on LinkedIn when people say, here is 90-day business strategy or security strategy, how to build successful, and then you look at them, some of them it's like, okay, yeah, it's kind of like big high level things that you can do it, but doesn't really help as we saw our security practitioner to take those things and go to the board and create actually
Yeah.
successful strategy. So it's like, from your experience, what have you seen? Like, okay, here are the steps I took and here's how it worked out. Yeah, sometimes it takes years. Like you said, some boards, they want to move fast, and others will say, okay, instead of going into 3 years, how about we extend it to 5? And how about we spend a little bit more time understanding it's like how to gauge all those factors and put them in the strategy. And I think the other big concept that you mentioned, it's visualization, because security is really ominous. So not many people can connect when you talk about them, even from business perspective, and to what you're trying to do for the business, what actually is going to happen and how it's going to work out. So make this connection and show them in a way that they will internalize it and be supportive of it. with understanding what somebody is trying to accomplish, I think is a pretty big
Mhm.
part of the success.
You know, a lot of people, every time I ever landed in a company, um, m- my first hire was a marketing person to build the PowerPoint slides and visualize what I wanted to accomplish, and then build the marketing campaign internally to do it. And I think it surprises a lot of people, but it's been my first move because I would outsource things like the assessments and stuff like that. Okay, give me an understanding of my attack surface and what's our risk, et cetera. And because those are one-time snapshot things I needed to do to then go fund and build the
Right.
program. Um, so I think that like you just said, the visualization part is really really important. And there, again, there's tons of tools. Mind map is an easy one. Mind maps are very powerful visualization tool that everybody should be using. Um, you know, so to your question around how long does it take and what's the formula? I so security is art and science. Being a CISO is art and science, and it's not just science, right? If it was just science and it just was a calculation and a recipe that we could just all just repeat and rinse repeat, CISOs wouldn't be making what they make. They make a lot less money, and because it just becomes a recipe. You're not But when you have to adjust to the threat environments, the geopolitical environments, the business environments, um, the pandemic environments, the technology shifts, it's a lot. And the 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 the, the recipe is like following frameworks and following and calculating risk in certain ways and following what I talked about as those five core pillars of a security strategy. That's the recipe. But you've got to adjust um, your tactics on a regular basis, and that's art. And I don't see that changing until the speed of innovation and the speed of threats and the speed just I don't that doesn't change. And you think about any major business leader. um I'm going to take marketing as an example. I mean, their business landscapes are changing so fast. As a business leaders make good money, not because they're at the top, but because what they're doing can't be done by a machine. That it's not just a
Right.
recipe. They're having to understand and make real time business decisions on intelligence they're getting about the market, about customers. If you want to be a first mover and not just move um, after everybody else, you have to be in tune to the market. And so I don't, and so the time is really dependent on yourself. And that's why there's some really, really good CISOs, and that's why there's not so good CISOs. I mean, it really is the art part of it.
Got it. All right, so there's no recipe, so it's more of an art than a science. And I think what you described and what you highlighted, it's CISOs must stay close to the business and be sort of keeping their ears close to the ground to understand where business is heading and what board is saying and what they care about, what they don't care about, and then make all those adjustments as you go. There is no strategy set in stone when you said, yes, here's my 5 years outlook, and that's how we're going to get there. It has to be adjusted. Everyone has to take all those proactive measures and take steps and make sure everything is getting aligned. So you may have this outlook, like you described at the beginning, where you want to go, this great vision articulated, but then all those small changes they need to take place, and CISOs must stay close to the board and understand better what the business does and where business is heading, because all those
Yeah.
changes are very dynamic. So they're
I'll,
not.
I'll add one thing to that for you is um, there. there are different kinds of leadership. And I think there are certain kinds of leadership that really matter for a CISO. And I believe personally that, I don't I don't think it's good if one person says, "Oh, I'm just this type of leader. I'm a servant leader," right? I think that at an executive level, you have to be able to be multiple types of leaders. And what I see as the most successful CISOs are a combination of three things. They are transformational, number one, right? Because they're thinking ahead and they're inspiring people, they're motivating them, and so that and they're being strategic, and there's a lot of creative thinking. It's the art, right? And but they're also very democratic. They have to be democratic with the business leaders and listening and building that strategy um, around kind of just making sure that everybody is going in the right direction. But that means they have to be bought in. You cannot just dictate to them, right? This has to be getting them to be interested and want to participate. And by the way, I learned that early on in my career that just authoritarian, right? It wasn't the way. And I learned that I was at a very large company, 140,000 person company, and I got we had 80 business units, and I had the biggest project technology had ever done was the cybersecurity program. And I went and said, okay, what's the fastest way to get everybody moving? Because this was a, a plan where everybody wanted it to be 6 years, and I wanted to get it done in 3. And so, I got with the CEO, and he said, "Well, I'm going to get behind this. I'm gonna tell the company this is a top 5 project of mine." And he said, "By the way, on all hands," he goes, "Listen, I want to know if any single one of these CEOs and CIOs of one of our divisions pushes back or isn't executing to your plan." And I said, "Okay." Well, I had one division that was doing that, and they were in the red, and so I let him know. And he brought it up on the all hands call, and he basically said, "If you do not do this project that Jason's demanding you do, you will not be here." Um, while that got them to move, they hated me, and they never wanted to work on anything I wanted to try and get them to work for, unless I had to go all the way to the top. And I learned that you know you can use more finesse, right? And that is being democratic and getting buy-in, being transformational, and that third type of leadership style is charismatic leadership. I think you're asking them to do hard work, and they need to feel the energy from you. And that third one isn't a requirement. I think the other two are, um, but I think that third one really helps.
Got it, got it. No, that's actually interesting, and I had similar experience. So, one question I would have for you, also based on your experience, what you just said about being transformational and inspiring. In certain cases, even so, you have all those qualities. Things are now working out, and from my perspective, I was looking at something that there's always alliance or a champion, that somebody on the board of directors, executive team, that will provide this additional step or additional help that is required for CISO to be successful. Have you seen this in your career, that yes, and an importance of it, to build this alliance, to have somebody who's going to be champion for you and provide you this backing and help you with understanding, and essentially when you go there, you at least have one voice in the room that will be
Yeah,
speaking for you.
absolutely. I mean, I would say you need champions. I think you need multiple champions, and at a minimum, you need to reduce almost everybody from working against you, right? But I believe you need multiple champions, and so you just kind of, again, every company is different, every organization is different based on what people are worried about, and so it, that's the I think that it's very important to get a CFO on board because they are controlling the purse string, right? They you don't they you want to have a strong relationship where they get it and they understand the downside risk. of something bad happening, because they're generally the ones close with you that's working on the insurance policy, things like that. So it's not the easiest thing to do, but I think turning the CFO into a champion is amazing when you can do it. That's what I've seen. I will say something on the board. One, it's you definitely want a champion on the board, and to get to know them. Uh, the one thing I'll say that is, probably a little bit unfortunate thing, and I've sat on, many boards, is that the boards really only have generally one power. They don't operationally get involved in the company, right? Their one power is they can hire or fire the CEO, and that's basically other than, okay, can they, there's a compensation committee, and they can control stock grants, and how much, um, how much equity there is in the company. But for the most part, boards are an oversight, and they can't command anything. They can ask, but I watch a lot of organizations where they don't, where they kind of like, okay, that's nice, and I've seen a lot of CISOs escalate to the board, and that goes sideways. It just really depends on the culture and the relationship, and the trust that there is. But I would not just be like, okay, it's all about the board. Personally, I think that you you want to just have their support, make them feel comfortable, but you really have to win over the executive operators of the company.
Got it. Yeah, definitely. And completely in agreement with you on all this, whatever you said today, and all the strategies and how to build it. And I hope the audience got really good. And I know we're running short a little bit on time here. So I certainly appreciate. And last questions for you I would have, it's like if you have any parent thoughts on the successful and everything that you described today to share with the audience, and what would be one of the most important things that they need to focus on to say, yes, if you want to build success, you cannot do everything at once, but there's a step you can take, and here's a step.
Yeah, I think everything starts with people. Um, I think it is focusing on your own personal growth as a leader. Always have a strategy for yourself, and make sure you have the very best people reporting to you that you can. So your first level line management and yourself need to be growing, um, and excelling. And the next thing is at the bottom, the talent you're bringing in. The generation of tomorrow. That we need to be bringing people in from high school and from college, and we should not be waiting and seeing that that they're you know that they already have experience. I watch kids I hire from high school get ramped up and are amazing in 6 months, and they can absorb like a sponge and then execute. And so one, it's just necessary as a community. We have way too many unfilled jobs, and but at the same time, I know so many people that want to be in this industry, and we're not opening that door. But yeah, we can play and can't find people, and can't find people affordable. But we could if we fix that. But I believe for any, remember that last thing I said, kind of about profitable. Focus on
Yep.
being profitable or operational excellence on the security strategy. I think the way to get scale is to hire a lot of $50,000 and $60,000 a year people in the U.S. or you know other parts of the world at $15,000 and $20,000 a year. And it's amazing what you can do with them when you have great leadership and great process around
Yep. Thank you for that, Jason. And again, I wanna thank you for coming on with us today, and we're closing our segment for today. So I hope to have you again. I had tons more questions about the strategy and how to weave technology into strategy and all those things that come to play. But for today, we'll just wrap it up and leave it at that. And again, certainly appreciate it. Thank you for coming on. And if you
that. All
want to
right.
share it,
Thank you.
yep. And for the audience, thank you for joining in and listening, and hope you learned a lot today from Jason's experience, and you can incorporate in your strategies. And remember, together we're stronger. So until next time, thank you very much.
Thanks for joining us. For more information about these topics or IS Squared, please go to www.issquaredinc.com.